Marcus wiped the grease from his hands onto his already stained coveralls, watching the massive bulk of Emperor Jothic's royal cruiser rise from Bay 7. The vessel's bright thrusters cast long streaks of gold across the hangar walls as it lifted off. Another imperial inspection. Another day of the towering reptilian emperor striding through the celestial forge shipyard without so much as looking in Marcus's direction. Not that Marcus minded. Being overlooked had its perks. "You fixed the quantum stabilizer again," Isabella said as she appeared beside him, handing him a steaming cup of station coffee. The brew was bitter, bordering on cruel, but it was better than nothing. Her violet Valoran eyes glimmered with amusement. The Emperor's chief mechanic spent 3 weeks trying to diagnose that problem. Marcus accepted the cup with a small shrug. "Loose coupling on the tertiary manifold. Basic stuff." "Basic for you," Isabella replied. She leaned against the railing, eyes tracking the cruiser as it drifted toward the star-speckled expanse beyond the hangar force field. "Did you hear?" she added after a moment. "The Emperor just authorized another 50 million credits for the search. That makes 200 million total now." Marcus nodded. He had heard. Everyone had. 6 months earlier, a mysterious transmission had reached the Imperial Science Assembly, containing a complete solution to the Krath equation. The Krath equation wasn't just a puzzle. It was the puzzle. It had tormented the brightest minds of the Empire for over 300 years. Full departments dedicated their lives to it. Generations died still arguing over it. And then, without warning, an anonymous message appeared with an answer so elegant and revolutionary that scientists wept reading it. The solution opened pathways to faster-than-light travel that made the Empire's proudest engines look like primitive toys. Whoever had solved it hadn't simply cracked the code, they had rearranged the known limits of physics. The transmission had come from nowhere and everywhere. It bounced through so many relay stations that tracing it was impossible. That alone had sent the Emperor into a fury. Emperor Jothic didn't just want the genius, he wanted ownership. He wanted that mind chain to his empire forever. "They're interviewing the station's senior staff tomorrow," Isabella said, breaking his thoughts. "Anyone with advanced mathematics credentials. The Emperor is convinced the genius must be someone important, someone from the core worlds, educated by elite academies." Marcus took a long sip of coffee instead of answering. His education had come from a cramped Earth apartment, a stack of puzzle books, and a grandmother who believed learning was a type of survival. He'd spent afternoons solving problems that made his teachers uncomfortable, scratching proofs in worn notebooks while other kids played outside. By 16, he'd outpaced every mentor he had. By 20, he'd learned the dangers of being gifted in a galaxy that loved to use gifted people. So he'd made himself invisible. Just another human, just another mechanic. Unremarkable, forgettable, ignored in the best way. "The Emperor's chief mathematician gave a speech today," Isabella continued. "He said the solution must be divine inspiration, that whoever solved it must be walking among the gods." She glanced sideways at Marcus, her expression thoughtful, almost knowing. "Funny, isn't it? Everyone's looking up when they should be looking around." Marcus's grip tightened on his coffee cup. Isabella had been watching him for months, ever since he'd casually mentioned a flaw in the shipyard's power distribution system, something the engineering team later confirmed after 3 weeks of analysis. She noticed things. She connected dots. She was dangerous in all the ways only smart people could be. "I should get back to work," Marcus said. "The transport in Bay 12 needs its engine calibrated." "That transport left an hour ago," she said quietly. "You calibrated it during your lunch break." I checked. Silence settled between them, filled only by the low hum of the station's machinery and distant clatter of workers preparing for the Imperial team. "Why?" Isabella finally asked. Her voice was softer now, without accusation. "Why hide what you can do?" Marcus turned to face the stars stretching endlessly beyond the station. The Jothic Empire spanned 200 systems, old and powerful. Humanity was new to the stars, tolerated but not respected. Humans were viewed as adaptable, but never exceptional. "Because the moment they know," Marcus said slowly, "I stop being Marcus the mechanic. I become Marcus the asset, Marcus the weapon, Marcus the thing to be used." He looked at her, letting the truth settle in the space between them. The Emperor doesn't want to hire whoever solved that equation. He wants to own them, control them, make sure their genius serves his empire alone. "And you'd rather fix engines?" she asked. "I'd rather be free." A small smile tugged at Marcus's lips. "Besides, I do my best work when no one's watching." He finished his coffee and added, almost casually, "Already transmitted 3 more papers under different pseudonyms. Solution to the Velkar paradox. New fusion containment protocols. A redesign of gravitational shielding that'll make ships twice as fast. Isabella stared at him, eyes wide. That was you. Marcus, the Velka solution has scientists losing their minds. They're calling it the work of multiple geniuses. A hidden think tank. Nope, Marcus said with a shrug. Just a human mechanic with too much free time during night shifts. She blinked at him, torn between awe and concern. They'll never stop searching, you know. The more you publish, the more desperate they'll become. Good, Marcus said with a grin. Let them burn credits. They're looking for someone extraordinary. Someone brilliant. Someone who stands out. He set his empty cup on the railing. They'll never think to look for someone who's learned the best trick in the universe. And what's that? She asked. Ordinary is the perfect disguise. He picked up his toolbox and headed toward the lift. Now, if you'll excuse me, there's a coolant leak in Bay for that everyone else says is impossible to fix. He shot her a look over his shoulder. Should take me 20 minutes. Isabella watched him walk away, baffled and amused in equal measure. Down on the hangar floor, the Emperor's search team was setting up an array of blinking scanners, quantum processors, and genetic analyzers. They were preparing to interview the station's elite engineers and academics. They brought everything except common sense. None of them paid the slightest attention to the grease-smudged human mechanic walking past with a battered toolbox. That evening, Marcus returned to his small, cluttered quarters. The door hissed shut behind him. The room was barely big enough to fit a bunk and a fold-out desk. But Marcus didn't need space. He needed quiet. He powered on his datapad, and lines of mathematics bloomed across the screen like constellations. His newest project, stable wormhole generation, the kind of breakthrough that would take other scientists decades to even conceptualize. To Marcus it felt like solving a melody. Numbers flowed through him with the ease of breathing. There was no pressure, no audience, no emperor waiting with claws outstretched, just curiosity and the peaceful rhythm of creation. Somewhere out in the Empire, the Emperor was raging at another dead end. Somewhere teams of specialists sifted through holofeeds, academic records, and genetic profiles. The galaxy was hunting a ghost that left no trace except brilliance. They searched for a prodigy cloaked in light. Meanwhile, in a forgotten corner of an ordinary shipyard, a mechanic scribbled equations that would change the future. He preferred it that way. Fame was a cage. Recognition was a leash. Freedom lived in quiet corners, in anonymity, in being no one important. After all, the best way to hide a star wasn't to dim its light. It was to place it where no one would ever bother to look among a billion others, shining just enough to blend in. And so Marcus kept writing, smiling softly as he shaped the universe one equation at a time. Invisible and untouchable, exactly the way he wanted to be.